Blasphemy, in the context of taking the place of God in someone's mind and heart, becomes an act of usurpation, a reordering of authority within the soul. If God represents the ultimate source of truth, guidance and sustenance, then to replace God with another figure, ideology, or even oneself, is to commit a kind of spiritual transgression against the natural order of consciousness. This is not just an external act of disrespect toward divinity, but an internal restructuring of allegiance that redirects one's light away from its original source. The usurpation of the divine throne in the mind. In spiritual traditions, God is often described as the light by which all thought and being are illuminated. When something or someone else takes God's place in the mind, that light becomes distorted. The heart, which is meant to be aligned with divine wisdom, is now governed by a lesser authority, one incapable of sustaining the soul at the same level. Blasphemy as idolatry of self or others. When a person or ideology becomes the central axis of someone's mind and heart, the natural flow of spiritual truth is interrupted. This is idolatry, not in the simple sense of worshiping a statue, but in the internal elevation of something finite to an infinite status. The mind, rather than orbiting around divine wisdom, now orbits around a person, idea, or feeling that cannot bear the weight of that position. Blasphemy as control over another's perception. If a person deliberately seeks to replace God in another's consciousness, they are not just manipulating thought, they are restructuring the architecture of belief. This is a direct assault on another's spiritual autonomy, demanding faith, allegiance, or surrender that should only belong to God. This is why figures who demand unquestioned loyalty often engage in a kind of psychological colonization, reshaping another's perception of truth in their own image. The death of thought as a consequence of blasphemy. When God is removed from the highest position in the mind and replaced with something lesser, thought itself begins to atrophy. This is because divine thought is meant to expand, to move toward greater wisdom, transformation, and revelation. But when a person, ideology, or even the self becomes the highest authority, thought collapses into a closed system, the echo chamber of a false God. If one's ultimate authority is another human, ideology, or emotion, then thought ceases to explore beyond what that authority allows. This is why cults, authoritarian regimes, and even unhealthy relationships demand absolute loyalty, because they cannot survive the presence of light that would expose their limitations. A mind that once sought divine wisdom now becomes a self-referential loop, endlessly justifying the false authority it serves. Emotional and spiritual stagnation. When someone takes the place of God in another's mind, they also take responsibility for that person's soul, but without the ability to sustain them. The result is emotional dependency, spiritual blindness, and eventual collapse. Since no human or ideology can truly replace the divine, those who take on this role often lead others to a kind of internal death, a slow starvation of real spiritual sustenance. The false prophet archetype, claiming to be the light. Blasphemy in this sense is most visible in figures who position themselves as the ultimate source of truth, whether in religion, politics, or personal relationships. False prophets, cult leaders, and ideological extremists all share one thing in common. They demand absolute submission to themselves, often presenting themselves as an intermediary or replacement for God. Psychological and spiritual colonization. When someone's thoughts are no longer their own, when they cannot question, explore, or seek beyond the authority of another, they are no longer spiritually free. They are mentally enslaved, not to God, who allows for growth and transformation, but to an earthly authority who seeks control rather than enlightenment. The Luciferian rebellion. In theological symbolism, Lucifer's fall was not about mere disobedience, it was about wanting to be God in the minds of others. His rebellion was not just against divine order, but against the very structure of truth itself. When someone takes the place of God in another's heart and mind, they enact the same pattern, demanding worship, controlling thought, and stifling light. breaking free, restoring God to the mind and heart. If blasphemy in this sense is the displacement of God, then the path to restoration is reclaiming divine sovereignty over one's mind and heart. This requires recognizing false authorities, identifying who or what has taken the place of God in one's consciousness, reclaiming spiritual autonomy, restoring the ability to think, seek, and question without fear, reorienting toward divine light, returning to a direct relationship with God rather than intermediaries who demand control, allowing thought to breathe again, letting go of limiting beliefs that have made spiritual growth impossible. To take the place of God in someone's mind is to corrupt not just their beliefs, but their very ability to think freely. It is a spiritual and intellectual form of enslavement, where the light of divine wisdom is replaced by the dim glow of human control. In this way, blasphemy is not merely about words or doctrines, it is about who holds authority over the soul's journey.